At the college reunion, Darius Vance said he was in a bad mood, said just seeing me was getting on his nerves. He told me not to come home tonight. His college flame, sitting right beside him, chimed in with sympathy. When my mother found out, she immediately sold our $8 million marital home. My husband, who brought his old flame home that night, was left standing speechless. The reunion was on its third round of toasts when Darius slammed his glass on the table. In front of all our old classmates, he announced, "I'm in a terrible mood. Just looking at Amara is irritating me. Don't come home tonight. It'll just make things worse." Sitting next to him, Simone Devereaux sighed softly, as if feeling his pain. "Amara, Darius has been under a lot of pressure lately. Try to understand. It's not a big deal to stay at your mother's for one night." In the private dining room, the previously boisterous laughter was cut short, as if silenced by an invisible hand. The cold glass of my cocktail, which I held suspended in midair, chilled my fingers, but I didn't let go. Darius Vance was my husband of 3 years. Simone Devereaux was his college sweetheart and the surprise guest of the evening. She wore a soft pink knit dress, a pair of pearl earrings dangling by her ears. She was sitting in the seat that was meant for me. I had arrived 10 minutes late. When I pushed the door open, I saw her already seated next to Darius. Before I could even take off my coat, our old friend Marcus, the reunion organizer, laughed awkwardly. "Amara, hey, come, sit over here." Simone just got back to the States, and everyone's catching up with her. Over here was the corner furthest from Darius. I didn't fight it. I sat down and listened to them talk about college, about clubs, about the time Darius waited 4 hours in the rain for Simone. Someone started teasing, "Darius, you're a married man now. Can't be pulling those romantic stunts anymore." Darius didn't look at me, he just smirked. Some people are different. Simone sipped her water, the corners of her eyes turning a little red. Everyone at the table understood. I understood too. Later, Darius took a call, his face growing darker by the second. Simone asked if it was trouble at the company. He said no, just that nothing was going right for him lately. Someone joked, "Let his wife cheer him up." Only then did he look at me. It wasn't the look of a husband to his wife. It was more like the look of an exhausted man spotting a pile of old trash by the door. That's when he said it. He told me not to come home tonight. I set my glass down, picked up my phone, and pressed record, then save. Darius saw me and frowned. "What are you doing now?" I placed my phone screen down on the table and slowly slipped the ring off my ring finger. It was the ring he bought in his first year of starting his company. It wasn't expensive, and the inside, engraved with our names, was already starting to wear away, much like our 3-year marriage, its edges slowly eroded by him. I put the ring in my purse. Simone said softly, "Amara, we're all old friends here. Don't make the atmosphere so tense. Darius is just asking you to cool off for a bit, not that he doesn't want you." I looked at her and smiled faintly. "Well, I hope you all have a wonderful time chatting." My calmness seemed to prickle Darius. He said coldly, "Amara, don't be passive-aggressive. If you want to leave, then leave. Don't expect me to come get you." I didn't answer. As I got up, Marcus tried to stop me, saying it was a rare get-together and we shouldn't make it ugly. I moved around his hand and walked to the door. Behind me, I heard someone whisper, "Amara used to be so gentle. Why is she so sensitive now?" Before the door closed, I heard Simone say, "Maybe she's always been insecure about me." And Darius's reply, "Don't mind her. She can't leave that home." I stood in the hallway and listened to that last line, forcing my tears back. Then I called my mother. The phone rang twice before she answered, her voice steady. "Is the reunion over?" I said, "Mom, Darius told me not to come home tonight." There was a 2-second pause. My mother asked, "What were his exact words?" I sent her the recording. A minute later, she replied with 4 words, "Then don't go back." I thought she just meant for me to come to her place. But her next sentence was, "That $8 million penthouse of yours? I'm selling it tonight." I stood under the hotel's crystal chandelier, my phone in my hand, suddenly speechless. That penthouse was a wedding gift from my mother. A top-floor duplex in the heart of the city, over 5,000 square feet with a terrace. The deed was in the name of her wholly owned company. She had told me, "The house is for you to live in, but it can never become a bargaining chip for any man to hold over you." At the time, I thought she was being too clinical, that marriage didn't require such clear-cut calculations. On the phone, my mother said, "Amara, I'm asking you one time, do you still want to leave the door open for him?" At the end of the hall, the door to the private room opened. Darius was helping a swaying Simone out. He seemed to have had too much to drink, half his body leaning on her. Neither of them saw me. Simone looked up at him. Darius, can I come over to your place tonight? I just got back, and my hotel feels so cold and empty. Darius said, Sure. It's not like she's coming back tonight anyway. I watched them step into the elevator. I said to my mother, No, don't leave it open. That night at 11:27 p.m., Darius and Simone arrived at the Sterling Grand. He scanned his fingerprint. The lock beeped once, and a red light flashed. He froze, then tried again. Failure. Simone stood by, arms crossed, her expression souring. Did Amara delete your access? Darius pulled out his phone to call me. I didn't answer. Just as he was about to lose his temper, the building manager approached from the other side of the elevator lobby, followed by two movers and a middle-aged woman in a gray business suit. The manager said politely, Mr. Vance, this property was sold and transferred this evening. The original owner has authorized the clearing of all residential access. Your personal belongings have been packed and moved to a temporary storage unit downstairs. The inventory list is here. Please check and sign for it. The color drained from Darius's face. He looked at the new seal on the door, then at the woman in the suit. She smiled. Mr. Vance, I am the new owner's attorney. From this moment on, you have no right to enter this property. Simone's hand slowly slid from his arm. Darius stared at the door, as if realizing for the first time that the home he had just told me not to return to was never his at all. Darius called me 32 times. The first call, I was in a cab. The second, I was settling into the apartment my mother had arranged. The third, I was taking off my makeup. The other 29, I didn't pick up. His initial questioning turned into furious voicemails. Amara, have you had your fun? What right does your mother have to sell the penthouse? That's our home. Simone and I are standing at the door right now. You tell the building management to let us in immediately. Do you have any idea how humiliated I am tonight? In the last voicemail, he seemed to have finally lost it, his voice low and menacing. Amara, I just told you not to come home for one night. Did you have to be so extreme? I listened, backed up the voicemails to the cloud, and then turned off my phone. In the living room, my mother, Vivian Sinclair, sat on the sofa with a glass of wine beside her. She was 56, with her hair cut to her shoulders, always dressed in elegant, neutral-toned suits. She spoke slowly and deliberately, and few people dared to lie to her face. She saw me come out and pushed a document toward me. This is the sales contract. It was finalized tonight. The transfer will proceed as normal. The buyer is Mr. Peterson from downstairs. He's wanted to buy it for 3 months, but we never agreed. Tonight, I did. He paid an extra $1 million for the trouble. I looked down at the contract. The print was clear, but in my hands, it felt like a sharp knife, cleanly slicing through the last 3 years of my weakness. That was so fast, I said. My mother looked at me. Fast? Amara, I've been waiting for this day for 3 years. I looked up. She wasn't blaming me. She just asked, Do you know why I never transferred the deed to your name? I knew, but I had never been willing to admit it. 3 years ago, when Darius and I got married, his company was just starting out. The office was in an old building, with only 7 employees. He had talent and ambition but lacked resources and a certain image. I offered up the Sterling Grand for him to host clients. I said there was no need to draw lines between husband and wife. The first time he brought a client home, he stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows and said half-jokingly, Now this looks like a founder's home. My mother heard him and only said one thing. A man who needs a woman's house to prove his worth will one day use the woman as a facade. I didn't like hearing that. Later, as Darius's company grew, the Sterling Grand became what he called home. He hosted private dinners on the terrace, held virtual meetings in the study, and filmed brand commercials in the living room. He never actively claimed the house was his, but whenever people praised him for being so successful at such a young age, he never corrected them. I tried to correct them once. A client was admiring the penthouse's taste, saying, Mr. Vance, you really know how to invest in yourself. I smiled and said, This was a premarital gift from my mother. When we got home, Darius was silent the entire night. The next day, he said, Amara, a man needs to maintain a certain image when he's doing business. You don't have to be so explicit about everything. I felt guilty then, thinking I had hurt his pride. Looking back now, if your pride has to be propped up by someone else's house, it was never very stable to begin with. My mother said, What you've given him these past few years isn't just a house. She pushed a second file toward me. It was a list of projects my design studio had collaborated on with his company over the last 3 years. I studied experiential space design in college. After graduating, I started a studio focused on urban renewal and branded environment transformations. It didn't sound glamorous, but executing projects required coordinating with developers, architects, contractors, and brand teams. Several of Darius's biggest clients had originally come through my projects. He was in charge of packaging the story. I was in charge of turning that story into a real, tangible space. But to the outside world, Darius was the CEO, and I was just Mrs. Vance. My mother tapped the list. The creative lead on all these projects is you. You have the right to terminate their continued use. I looked at the familiar project names, my fingers turning cold. Mom, it's not like I never thought about leaving. Then why didn't you? I was silent for a long time. Outside, the traffic flowed like a cold white river through the city, because I always felt he was just tired. He was under pressure from his startup. His family background wasn't strong. I was afraid that if I left, it would be like invalidating all his years of hard work. My mother looked at me, her eyes filled not with triumph, but with pity. Amara, you can't tell the difference between supporting someone and subsidizing them. That sentence hurt more than Darius telling me he was sick of seeing me. But it was also more sobering. At 1 a.m., the doorbell rang. My mother's assistant answered it. Darius stood outside, wearing the same black coat from the party, his hair messy from the night wind, dark circles under his eyes. Simone wasn't with him. The first thing he said when he saw me wasn't an apology. It was, "Are you satisfied now?" My mother didn't tell me to hide. She sat on the sofa and looked at him calmly. Darius walked in, his voice suppressed. "Vivian, that penthouse is Amara's and my marital home. You should have at least discussed it with me." My mother said, "Don't call me Vivian. That property is a corporate asset of my company. Amara has residency rights. You have no right of disposal. You told her with your own mouth not to come home. I was just helping you make your words a reality." Darius's face grew uglier. He looked at me. "Amara, are you just going to stand there and watch your mother humiliate me?" I looked up. "Weren't you just standing there watching Simone humiliate me in that private room tonight?" He froze. Perhaps because my voice was so calm, he couldn't find his usual entry point for an argument. In our past fights, as soon as he frowned and went silent, I would be the first to soften, worrying about his stomach issues, his late nights, the pressure from his company. Tonight, I didn't. Darius took a deep breath and softened his tone. "I admit, I misspoke tonight. Simone just got back to the country, and she's not in a good place. I was worried she'd be embarrassed. Just get the access to the penthouse restored, and we can talk about this when we get home." I looked at him. "It can't be restored." He frowned. "What do you mean?" I pushed the sales contract toward him. "The house is sold." He flipped through a couple of pages, his face instantly tightening. "Are you people crazy? You sold an $8 million penthouse just like that?" My mother corrected him. $9 million. Darius looked like he'd been choked. He looked at me, a flicker of panic finally appearing in his eyes. "Amara, that was our home." I said, "No. It was the place you told me not to come back to." In that moment, Darius finally realized I wasn't throwing a tantrum. I was just starting to listen to him. He didn't concede on the spot. He tossed the contract on the coffee table, his tone turning cold. "The sale of the house can be negotiated, but what about my things? My computer, my files, my client data are all in the study. You moved them without my permission. If anything is lost or damaged, I will hold you legally responsible." My mother's assistant produced a list. "Mr. Vance, all your personal belongings were packed under full video surveillance by a professional moving company. Valuables were sealed separately. They are all stored in a temporary unit in the sublevel of the Sterling Grand. You can retrieve them with your ID and this inventory list." Darius snatched the list and flipped to the third page, then suddenly stopped. "Where is the external hard drive from the east side cabinet in the study?" The assistant replied, "There was no external hard drive on the list. In that cabinet, there were only Miss Sinclair's project archives." Darius looked at me. "That's company data too." I didn't respond. I knew which hard drive he was talking about. A gray metal case with a ginkgo leaf sticker on it. It contained all the spatial design concepts I had created over the past 5 years, including the original draft of the Haven project, which his company had used to win a major client last year. It wasn't Darius's company data. It was my work. 3 months ago, he said his company needed to do a case study review and borrowed the hard drive. When I asked for it back, he said it was in the study at home and I could get it any time. But tonight, during the move, it wasn't on the list. Seeing my silence, Darius softened his tone again. Amara, this isn't the time to be stubborn. The final presentation for the Horizon account is next Monday. The Haven project is tied to the company's biggest contract this year. Give me the hard drive. Let me get through this project first. I looked at him. Is Simone also attending the final presentation? He hesitated for half a second. That half second sent a chill through me. She just got back. I asked her to join as a creative consultant, just to listen in. She said she studied art therapy before, and it aligns with the project's direction. I laughed. So, she listens in on my proposal, and it becomes her direction? Darius's face darkened. Amara, don't make it sound so ugly. Simone is just providing emotional value and artistic expression. The core work is still done by the company's team. And what about me? I asked. He looked like he didn't understand. I asked again. What is my role in this project? The living room fell silent. My mother sat beside me, not speaking for me. She was waiting for me to finish asking my own questions. Darius pinched the bridge of his nose, as if his patience had reached its limit. Of course you're important, but you're my wife. Do we really have to calculate everything so clearly between us? Amara, when the company does well, it benefits you too. I had heard that line many times. The first time he asked me to introduce a client to him, he said it. The first time he merged my studio's team into his project group, he said it. The first time he asked me not to emphasize my independent identity in front of clients, he said it again. We didn't calculate things clearly between us, so his company got clearer and clearer about taking my value, while I became more and more vaguely Mrs. Vance. From now on, I said, we calculate everything clearly. Darius stared at me as if seeing a stranger for the first time. He didn't get the hard drive. Before he left, he threw one last line at me. You'll regret this. If the Horizon project falls through because of you, the loss isn't something you can fix by turning on the tears. After the door closed, my mother asked, Are you scared? I nodded. Yes. It was the Horizon Group, their most important women's community space renovation of the year. The budget was huge, the visibility high. If the final presentation went wrong, Darius's company would suffer, and my studio would be implicated. After all, the outside world had always seen us as a deeply integrated husband and wife team. I was afraid of being questioned by clients about my stability, afraid that the reputation I had built over the years would be dragged down by my marriage. More than that, I was afraid that in a moment of weakness, I would hand over the hard drive again. My mother said, It's normal to be scared. Boundaries aren't established by shouting. They're built by enduring the consequences, one at a time. The next morning, I turned on my phone. The screen was flooded with messages from Darius. There was anger, threats, and a rare gentleness. Amara, I was impulsive last night. Simona's just a friend, don't misunderstand. Come back, and let's make this work. Don't let outsiders laugh at us. The last message was sent at 8:20 a.m. The Horizon presentation is at noon. You have to be there. It wasn't an invitation, it was a command. I didn't reply. I logged into my work email and began to reorganize all the original drafts, revision histories, site survey photos, and client communication notes for the Haven project. Every file had a timestamp. For every meeting, I had an email confirmation. After doing that, I opened the smart home backend for the Sterling Grand. Although the penthouse was sold, the visitor logs and access records from the past month were still within the authorization period. My account was the primary account. Darius didn't know I had never turned off the record synchronization. Scrolling down the list, I saw Simone Devereaux's name. It wasn't just from last night. Over the past 2 months, she had entered the Sterling Grand 9 times. 3 of those times were while I was on business trips. One visit lasted from 10 p.m. until 6:40 a.m. the next morning. My hand froze on the mouse. It was impossible not to feel pain, but clearer than the pain was the realization of the real reason Darius had told me not to come home. He wasn't in a bad mood. He was just used to pushing me out so he could let another woman in. At noon, I arrived at the Horizon Group headquarters. Outside the conference room, Darius saw me. A flash of surprise in his eyes quickly turned to resignation. I knew you'd come, he said. When we go in, don't mention last night. Simone was standing next to him, wearing a temporary consultant badge. Under her name, it read, Artistic Co-Creator, The Haven Project. I looked at that line of text and found it utterly ridiculous. She saw me too and smiled softly. Amara, I'm so glad you're here. Darius said you understand this project better than anyone. I was worried you wouldn't come because of me. I didn't answer her. The conference room door opened, and Mr. Harris, the project head at Horizon, came out. He smiled. Devereaux, you're all here. Shall we begin? I looked up. Mr. Harris, before we start, I need to correct something. Darius's face changed. I connected my laptop to the projector and opened the first file. The Haven Project's original concept designer and lead narrative curator is me, Amara Sinclair. My authorization never included naming Miss Simone Devereaux as a co-creator. The room fell silent. The smile on Simone's face froze. Darius said in a low voice, Amara, don't cause a scene. I looked at the authorization contract on the screen, my voice steady. From this moment on, Darius Vance's company, without my written consent, is prohibited from using any of the spatial narratives, user flow designs, or archival materials from the original proposal of the Haven Project. Mr. Harris frowned. Mr. Vance, what is going on here? Darius's hands clenched into fists. And I finally took that ring out of my purse and placed it on the conference table, not to return it to him, but to remind myself. From this day forward, I would no longer be anyone's free background. The Horizon presentation was ultimately suspended. Mr. Harris, a veteran of the business world for over 20 years, didn't lose his temper on the spot. He understood that marital disputes could be mediated, but copyrights and authorizations were non-negotiable. He had his legal team photocopy the authorization contract I provided and seal the proposal submitted by Darius's company. Simone sat on the other side of the table, her face completely ashen. She whispered, Amara, I didn't know about the byline. If it made you uncomfortable, I can have it removed. It was a clever sentence. She framed copyright infringement as my discomfort, and her gain as a concession she was willing to make. In the past, I might have let it slide to save face, but I was no longer living in that penthouse. I said, Miss Devereaux, you didn't know about the byline? Then who authorized your badge? You didn't know about the co-creator's status? Then why did the personal bio you sent to Horizon last Wednesday state that you participated in the early-stage research for the Haven Project? Simone's eyelashes trembled. Darius immediately interjected. That bio was prepared by an administrative assistant. There might have been an error. I looked at him. How would an admin assistant know she participated in early-stage research unless someone gave them the materials? His face turned cold. Amara, must you air our dirty laundry in front of a client like this? This is business, not dirty laundry, I said. Mr. Harris tapped the table. Mr. Vance, let's stop here for today. Within 3 days, please have your company submit an explanation of the authorization chain and a revised proposal. Miss Sinclair, if you are willing, please also provide us with a separate statement of your sole ownership. I nodded. After the meeting, Darius cornered me by the elevators. His voice was low and strained. Do you know how much damage you just caused the company? I know. You know, and you still did it? Because if I didn't, I wouldn't even have my own name left. He stared at me, an unfamiliar anger rising in his eyes. When did you become like this? So calculating, so aggressive, leaving no room for anyone. The elevator doors opened. I walked in and pressed the button for the ground floor. Before the doors closed, I said, probably from the moment you told me not to come home. Back at my studio, my partner Lena was already waiting. Lena was my college roommate and one of the few people who knew how much I had put into my marriage. She pushed a coffee toward me. So, you finally decided to pull the plug. I couldn't manage a smile. It might affect the studio. She opened her laptop. It already has. Darius's company just sent an email claiming the Haven Project was a joint creation between husband and wife, and your unilateral withdrawal of authorization is a breach of contract. They're demanding we compensate them for their subsequent business losses. I looked at the email and felt a sense of calm. This was the real Darius. He wouldn't immediately regret losing a house overnight. He would first look for loopholes in the rules to drag me back in. What do we do? Lena asked. We follow the contract, I said. We reviewed the documents line by line. The earliest version of the Haven Project was a research paper on community spaces for women that I completed independently in March of last year. At that time, Horizon hadn't even initiated the project, and Darius's company wasn't involved. Later, when he heard me talk about this direction, he offered to help with the communications and branding side. I relented and agreed to include the proposal in his company's bid file, but I added specific restrictions. The core creative credit belonged to me, its use was limited to the Horizon project, it could not be sub-licensed to a third party, and the byline could not be altered. My mother had forced me to add those clauses at the time. I had even thought she was making a big deal out of nothing. Now, it was the clearest line I had in my hand. At 4 p.m., I got a call from Darius's mother, Brenda Vance. Her voice was as shrill as ever. Amara, how could you let your mother sell the house? When couples fight, the in-laws should never get involved. The house belongs to my mother, I said. But you and Darius lived there for 3 years. How is he supposed to face his friends now? I leaned back in my chair and let her continue her tirade. Brenda had always been very pleased with me, not because she liked me, but because I didn't make a fuss. She had stayed at the Sterling Grand 3 times, and each time she brought relatives over to take pictures. She would brag that Darius was so capable, he married me and got to live in a mansion. I had once reminded her not to post the location, and she complained behind my back that I was stingy. Now that the house was gone, she was even more anxious than Darius. And then there's Simone, she went on. The poor girl just got back to the country, all alone. Darius is just looking out for an old friend, and you want to file for divorce? Don't you know how that will make you look? Ma'am, I never said I was filing for divorce. She paused, her tone softening. That's right, couples kiss and make up. You go and apologize to Darius, get this house business sorted out. I finished her thought slowly. I just hadn't gotten around to saying it. I can say it now. I will be filing for divorce. The other end of the line went completely silent. Then Brenda's voice shot up. Amara, are you crazy? Darius's company is at a critical stage. Filing for divorce now will ruin him. When he told me not to come home at the reunion, I said, he wasn't afraid of ruining me. After hanging up, I sat for a long time. Not out of reluctance, but out of a sense of absurdity. In this marriage, everyone just assumed I should be the understanding one. Understand his career, his old flame, his pride, his mother's vanity. But not a single person ever asked me, when I was kicked out of my own home, where was my dignity? That evening, Lena forwarded me a new email. It was from Horizon's legal department. They were requesting that both my studio and Darius's company submit complete ownership materials, and they were halting all promotional activities. Attached to the email was the final presentation version of the proposal Darius's company had submitted. I opened it. The first thing I saw was the cover page. The Haven Project. Lead planner, Darius Vance. Artistic co-creator, Simone Devereaux. My name was on the 3rd page, in a tiny font. My title, Domestic Space Consultant. Domestic Space Consultant. I stared at those 3 words and suddenly started to laugh. That night, I printed out the document and added it to my evidence binder. The first page was the recording from the reunion. The second was the access log from the Sterling Grand. The third was the time-stamped original draft of The Haven Project. The fourth was the final document from Darius's company with the altered byline. I didn't release it immediately. I knew Darius would strike back, and a true reckoning couldn't be won with just grievances. It had to be won with every single piece of evidence he thought would never see the light of day. 3 days later, Darius asked to meet. The location he chose was the restaurant where we had dinner the day we registered our marriage. When I received the address, I stared at the screen for a few seconds. It was a private kitchen that required reservations 2 weeks in advance. I used to book it every year for our anniversary. Darius would often have to work late, leaving me to wait alone until the food grew cold. The first time he booked it himself, it was for a negotiation. I went. Not for old time's sake, but because some things you have to hear in person to understand just how a person can package betrayal as a plea for sympathy. In the private room, Darius had changed into a dark gray suit, his hair neatly styled. On the table was the sweet potato gnocchi with sage butter I used to love. He saw me and stood up to pull out a chair. You're here. I didn't take the chair he offered, sitting opposite him instead. His hand paused on the back of the chair, his expression stiffening. Amara, let's not be like this. He sat down, his voice low. I've done a lot of thinking these past few days. I was wrong at the reunion. I shouldn't have told you not to come home, and I definitely shouldn't have said those things in front of everyone. It was the first time he had admitted he was wrong, but I felt no relief. His apology was too precisely timed, coming right after the project was suspended. Go on, I said. Darius pursed his lips. You've misunderstood about Simone. We had something back then, but that was a long time ago. She came back this time because her mother passed away, and she's in a really bad place. I was helping her out as a friend. So her entering the Sterling Grand 9 times was also as a friend? His brow twitched. You checked the access logs. I looked at him. It was my residency right. He was silent for a moment, then changed his tone. I admit, I let her come over a few times. But nothing happened between us. Amara, you know me. I'm not that kind of person. I used to think I knew him. I knew he had a sensitive stomach, that he hated cilantro, that he fiddled with his cufflinks when he was nervous, and that the more assertive he was in public, the more silent he became at home. But I never knew he was capable of living in my house while bringing another woman into it. Did you change the byline on the final proposal? I asked. He avoided my eyes. The team was putting the document together. Considering Simone was going to be responsible for the artistic expression, they adjusted the presentation. And why was my name changed to Domestic Space Consultant? Amara, you've always been better at domestic spaces. I laughed. The Haven Project is about a public support system for urban women, not home renovation. Darius grew agitated. Must you fixate on the wording? The client looks at the overall picture. They don't care about these details. I care, I said. He stared at me, as if discovering for the first time how difficult the words I care were to deal with. After the food arrived, he tried to serve me the gnocchi. I didn't touch my fork. He slowly put down the serving utensils, finally revealing his true purpose. Restore the authorization for the Haven Project. I won't pursue the matter of the house. As for the divorce, let's take a month to cool off. At least let's get through the Horizon Project first. Will Simone be stepping down? I asked. He frowned. Amara, don't treat Simone like an imaginary enemy. I opened my purse and placed a printed document on the table. This isn't imaginary. It was a public record of business information and court judgments. Before returning to the country, Simone had registered an art therapy consulting studio abroad, which had shut down in less than a year. Her father had debts back home, and she herself was involved in 2 contract disputes. After returning, she needed a sufficiently impressive project to secure new investment. The Haven Project was her perfect springboard. After reading it, Darius's face changed. You investigated her. Her resume appeared on my project. Of course I have to confirm if she's qualified. He pushed the document back. Her family's debt has nothing to do with the project. Then what about her using my proposal to pitch investors? Does that have something to do with the project? Darius's eyes instantly sharpened. It was that flash that confirmed my suspicion. He knew. I took a second document from my purse. It was an event flyer. The Woven Woman, an art therapy salon. Hosted by Simone Devereaux. The background image was the Echo Kitchen concept art I designed for the Haven Project. That image had never been made public. It only existed on the hard drive I had lent to Darius. The event date was the day after the reunion. The location, the Sterling Grand. I finally understood why Darius had been so insistent that I not come home that night. He wasn't bringing Simone back on a whim. He had already planned to use my home as the stage for her debut. My mother selling the penthouse so quickly had simply cut their plans short. Darius's face was a mask of extreme ugliness. He said in a low voice, I can explain this. Simone just wanted to take some atmospheric photos. It wasn't for actual commercial use. The flyer was already sent to investors. That's not a public release. So as long as it's not public, you two can take my work, in the house my mother bought, to burnish her reputation. Darius shot to his feet, the legs of his chair scraping loudly against the floor. Amara, that's enough, he hissed, his anger barely contained. I've already humbled myself. What more do you want? Simone has no way out right now. Why can't you just give her a chance? I looked up at him, and what about my way out? He froze. When you told me not to come home, did you think about my way out? When you removed my name from the proposal, did you think about my way out? When you brought her into my home and prepared to give her my work, did you think about my way out? Darius's mouth opened, but no sound came out. I stood up and pushed the plate of gnocchi aside. Darius, I'm not refusing to give Simone a chance. I looked him straight in the eye and said, word by word, I'm just no longer letting you two climb over me to get your chances. As I walked out of the restaurant, a light rain began to fall. I didn't have an umbrella. In the past, Darius would have called me careless and draped his coat over me. Now, he followed me out, standing under the eaves, his voice scattered by the rain. Amara, if you keep this up, there's really no going back for us. I paused for a moment but didn't turn around. Then let's not go back. Darius's counterattack came swiftly. At 9 a.m. the next morning, his company released an internal memo, which was screenshotted and spread through industry group chats. The memo was cautiously worded, stating that the Haven project was a team creation and that a recent family dispute had led to emotional behavior from a certain collaborator. It assured everyone that the company was handling the authorization legally and that the project's core would not be affected. It didn't name me, but everyone knew who the certain collaborator was. At 10 a.m., Simone posted on her Instagram story. The picture was of a hospital hallway, her hand with an IV bandage on it. The text was just one sentence. Sometimes good intentions are misunderstood, but I believe the light will find its way in. The post was quickly shared in our old college alumni group. Some said I was being too aggressive. Others said Darius had had it tough these past few years. Someone even messaged me privately. Amara, it's normal for a man to have a few close female friends. As long as there was no actual cheating, you didn't have to sell the house, did you? I looked at these messages and was suddenly reminded of the reunion night. They had sat around the table just like this, watching me get kicked out. It wasn't that they didn't know his words were hurtful. They just felt that as long as I was the one being hurt, I should be more graceful, more understanding, and not make a scene. At noon, the studio got a call from Horizon. The project communication meetings were suspended. Future collaboration would be pending a legal assessment. Lena hung up the phone, her face grim. They've put our other two smaller projects on hold as well. Darius's smear campaign, framing it as a domestic squabble, had worked. Clients hate instability. I looked at the project schedule on the whiteboard, red flags piling up. This was the price. I wasn't some drama heroine who could get a round of applause from everyone by just withdrawing authorization. In the real world, clients don't care who was wronged. They only care about whether the project is at risk. And Darius knew that all too well. He knew I was afraid of the studio being dragged down. At 3 p.m., I received a cease and desist letter. Darius's company demanded I stop spreading false information, restore the authorization, and compensate for the losses caused by the suspended presentation. At the same time, Brenda Vance, along with two relatives, showed up at my mother's office building. They didn't go up. They just stood in the lobby and cried. Brenda told the receptionist, "My daughter-in-law is being incited by her mother to ruin my son's career. We're hard-working people, and just because her family has money doesn't mean she can treat us like trash." The receptionist didn't dare to be too forceful. A crowd gathered. My mother didn't have security, remove them. She went downstairs herself and stood before Brenda. "Mrs. Vance, your son lived in a property owned by my company for 3 years without paying a single cent of rent. Now that the residency right has been revoked, you say I'm bullying simple people?" Brenda's crying paused for a beat, then grew louder. See? She thinks her money gives her the right to walk all over us. When you agreed to let your daughter marry him, didn't you approve of our Darius? Now they have a little fight, and you sell the house. What kind of elder does that? I arrived just in time to hear that line. The lobby was full of onlookers. My mother saw me, her brow furrowing slightly, as if worried I'd be embarrassed. I walked over and stood by her side. "Mom, I'll handle this." Brenda saw me and immediately rushed to grab my hand. "Amara, Mom is begging you. Just make up with Darius. Stop this nonsense. I've met that Simone girl. She's a very sensible child. She would never come between you two. Why can't you just tolerate her?" I pulled my hand away. "Mrs. Vance, do you know that Simone Devereaux has spent the night at the Sterling Grand?" Her face changed. The onlookers began to whisper. Brenda quickly retorted, "Don't talk nonsense. Darius is not that kind of person." I opened my phone and showed her the access log. She entered 9 times. One of those was an overnight stay. "You can say Darius is not that kind of person, but the records won't speak for him." Brenda's lips moved, and then she suddenly clutched her chest and fell backward. Her relatives shrieked, "Amara, you're giving her a panic attack. Look what you're doing to her." The lobby descended into chaos. People were filming with their phones. I didn't go to help her up. Not because I was cold-hearted, but because I saw Brenda's eyes flick toward the nearest camera lens just before she fell. I called 911 and asked the front desk to pull the security footage, preserving everything from the moment she entered until she hit the floor. After Brenda was taken to the hospital, videos of the incident still ended up online. The headlines quickly became, "Wife sells marital home to evict husband, mother-in-law rushed to ER in tears." Darius called me, his voice sounding like it was squeezed through his teeth. "Amara, are you satisfied now? If anything happens to my mother, I won't let you off the hook. I stood in the hospital corridor, looking at the light above the emergency room. If something really is wrong with her, I will take the responsibility I should. But if she's faking it, I will pursue the matter. He sneered. You're a monster now. Compared to you two, I said, I'm still far behind. That night, Brenda's test results came back. No real medical emergency, no serious issues, just fluctuating blood pressure. But the videos had already gone viral. My studio's official social media accounts were flooded with angry comments. Some cursed me for being a rich bully. Some called me a toxic daughter-in-law. Some even posted screenshots of my past projects, saying, how ironic for a woman like this to be designing spaces for women. Lena's eyes were red with anger. Let's clarify this. Let's release the access logs and the recording. I looked at the comments, my finger hovering over the post button. After a few seconds, I closed the page. Not yet. Lena was stunned. Not yet? If we release it now, I explained, it only proves Darius brought Simone home. It doesn't prove they stole the proposal. The public will focus on the emotional affair, and the project will get even messier. Then what do we do? I opened my evidence binder and looked at the one missing piece. The gray hard drive was still missing. As long as it was in Darius's hands, he could keep insisting the proposal was a team effort. First, we find the hard drive, I said. Lena asked, where do we look? I remembered the access log. On the evening of the reunion, an unfamiliar courier had entered the Sterling Grand and stayed for 8 minutes. During those 8 minutes, neither I nor Darius was home. I zoomed in on the screenshot of the log. The recipient registered by the courier was Simone Devereaux. Finding that courier was harder than I thought. The management at the Sterling Grand would only provide the registration log. They wouldn't give me the surveillance footage directly. Since the property was sold, I was no longer a resident. To get more detailed footage, I had to go through formal channels. I didn't try to force it. I first contacted the new owner's attorney, asking for their assistance in preserving the security footage of the common areas from before the handover. Mr. Peterson had been quick to buy and knew why my mother had suddenly sold. His lawyer responded promptly, saying they could send a letter to the building management, but it would take time. Time was exactly what I lacked. Darius's company had already submitted a second version of their materials to Horizon. They claimed the Haven project had originated from an internal company brainstorm, and I, as a family member, had merely provided some lifestyle suggestions. They argued that Simone's art therapy module was independently developed and did not constitute infringement. The claim was absurd, but absurdity didn't mean it wasn't damaging. They produced several meeting minutes where all my contributions were attributed to additions by Mr. Vance. And although Simone didn't appear in the early meetings, she was listed as an external art consultant who provided long-term directional advice. Lena slammed her hand on the table after reading it. This is just fabrication. It is, I said. We can call the police, but the evidence isn't complete yet. We need to find out who created those minutes, where the original versions are, and who ordered the changes. Lena gritted her teeth. Darius knows the process too well. He wasn't just maliciously stupid. He was smart, evil. He knew exactly what kind of documents would make a client hesitate, what kind of wording could turn infringement into a dispute, and what kind of public opinion could silence me first. And most terrifyingly, he knew that in the past, I was unwilling to take things to the extreme. So he was betting I would back down. That afternoon, I received a call from an unknown number. The voice was low. Miss Sinclair? This is Crystal, from Mr. Vance's company. I'm the admin who made the badges and took the meeting minutes last week. I sat up straight. Why are you contacting me? She was silent for a few seconds. Because today, the company wanted me to sign a statement saying all the materials were my own organizational error and had nothing to do with Mr. Vance. If there's any trouble later, I'm supposed to take the blame. I closed my eyes. Darius was already starting to throw people under the bus. Crystal said, I know I shouldn't get involved in my boss's family business, but I didn't just make up those minutes. Mr. Vance sent me revision instructions. Miss Devereaux also sent me her personal bio template. I have the chat records. Are you willing to testify? Her voice trembled. I'm afraid of losing my job. I didn't push her. Protect yourself first. Back up the original records to a personal email. Don't use a company computer. We can have the evidence notarized first without disclosing your name. She sounded relieved. There's one more thing. I saw that gray hard drive. I gripped the phone tighter. Where? On the day of the reunion, Miss Devereaux had a runner pick up a hard drive from the Sterling Grand and deliver it to the office. Later, Mr. Vance took it and locked it in his office safe. Are you sure it was gray with a ginkgo leaf sticker? I asked. Positive. The sticker was very noticeable. After hanging up, I sat motionless for a long time. The hard drive wasn't lost. It was with Darius. He knew it contained my original files, so he took it first, then changed the byline, then made it impossible for me to prove my case at a critical moment for the project. This wasn't a mistake made in the heat of the moment. This was premeditated. That evening, I went to the hospital to see Brenda. Not to visit, but to gather evidence. She was in a private room. Darius was pouring her a cup of water. Simone was there too, sitting by the bed, gently tucking in Brenda's blanket. They looked like a perfect family. When I pushed the door open, all three of them looked at me at once. Brenda's face immediately turned cold. What are you doing here? Not satisfied I didn't die from your anger? I put down the bouquet of flowers. The doctor said you're fine. I came to see for myself. Simone stood up. Amara, Miss Brenda has just stabilized. Please don't upset her. I looked at her. Did I say anything? Her eyes reddened. Darius put down the pitcher. Amara, that's enough. This is a hospital, not a place for you to make a scene. I nodded. Good, because I don't want to make a scene either. I took out a document. This is a draft of the divorce agreement. Regarding assets, I am only claiming my share of the joint income earned during the marriage, as well as the licensing fees generated from my company's use of my proposals. The Sterling Grand is not marital property, so you don't need to worry about it. The room was silent. Darius stared at the agreement, his face turning ashen. Brenda exploded first. You want a share of the company's income? Darius built that company himself. What does it have to do with you? The company's first 5 major clients, 3 came from my project resources, I said. The Haven project is also my original concept. I haven't taken a fixed salary for the past 3 years, but that doesn't mean my labor doesn't exist. Simone said softly, Amara, talking about money between a husband and wife really hurts the relationship. I looked at her. It didn't hurt when you were using my proposal to raise money for yourself? Her face stiffened. Darius stood up, blocking her from my view. I won't sign the agreement. Then we'll go to court, I said. His eyes turned icy. You think you'll definitely win? Amara, don't forget, for the past 3 years, a lot of your work has been under my company's name. If this goes to court, it won't look good for you either. That sentence finally revealed his trump card. He wasn't just trying to steal the project. He wanted to turn all my labor from the past 3 years into his company's assets. I looked at him, the last bit of hesitation in my heart completely gone. Darius, do you know why I never used to fight with you? He didn't speak. Because I saw you as my husband. I picked up the agreement and put it back in my purse. From now on, you're just my opponent. As I left the room, Simone followed me out. She called my name at the end of the hallway, Amara. I stopped. The gentle look on her face was gone. Do you really think selling the house and withdrawing the authorization means you've won? Darius needs someone who can stand with him in the spotlight. You did all that work, but you were still hiding in the background. I looked at her and suddenly understood why she was so desperate for the byline. She wasn't in love with Darius to the point of self-sacrifice. She was just desperate to transform from being the ex-girlfriend in someone else's story into a person with her own work, her own identity, a way to make a comeback. She chose Darius not because he was so worthy of love, but because he just happened to have my work in his hands. Simone, I said, if you want to stand in the spotlight, do it with your own work. She smirked, her eyes cold. Then you'll have to prove it's yours first. Proving something is far more difficult than simply telling the truth. I began to deconstruct my past 5 years of work, piece by piece. The earliest research photos were taken in an old neighborhood in the south side of the city. I wasn't married then, and Darius hadn't founded his current company. The photos showed broken lights in hallways, handwritten mutual aid phone numbers from neighborhood aunties, and the silhouette of a single mother waiting with her child for a late-night bus. The first core concept of the Haven project came from those nights. What I wanted to create wasn't just a beautiful space, but a public corner where women squeezed by family, work, and marriage could catch their breath, seek help, and rearrange their lives. But now, Darius and Simone had packaged it as art therapy. The flyers said, soft, healing, return to love. I looked at those words and just felt a deep sense of irony. Lena stayed up with me until dawn, organizing all the files chronologically. Amara, look at this. She pulled up an old email. The sent date was March 17 of last year. The recipient was Darius. In the body of the email, I had sent him the first version of the Haven project and asked if there was potential for collaboration on the communications side. He had replied, "This is a great direction. My company can help with the packaging, but the core is still you." Lena's eyes lit up. "This sentence is crucial." I nodded. "Crucial, but not enough. Darius can still claim the team later developed it further. We still need the original engineering files from the hard drive and the chat logs, showing he ordered the admin to change the byline." Crystal hadn't been in touch. I didn't rush her. As a regular admin assistant caught between her boss and the truth, every step she took was a real-world risk. On the third night, she finally sent a message. "Miss Sinclair, I'm resigning tomorrow. I can give you the chat records tonight, but I can't appear publicly." I replied, "Okay, protect yourself first." Half an hour later, she sent a set of screenshots and exported emails. In an internal group chat, Darius had written explicitly, "No need to list Amara as the lead planner. It makes the client feel like the project isn't under the company's control. Simone is back and needs a project for her portfolio. Add her as artistic co-creator for now. I'll handle the communication later." In the original drafts, any mention of Amara Sinclair should be softened to domestic space consultant. There was another message from Simone to Darius. "Darius, I don't want to be known as the girl who came back relying on a past relationship. If this project is a success, I can start over. Amara loves you so much. She probably won't mind a byline, right?" Darius had replied, "She won't." Those two words hurt more than any argument. It wasn't that he didn't know I would be hurt. He was just certain I would endure it. The next day, I went to Darius's company with my lawyer. Subating the preservation of evidence letter in advance, requesting to seal the computers and server files related to the Haven project, as well as the removable storage devices in Darius's office safe. Darius wasn't there. The receptionist blocked us, saying we couldn't enter without an appointment. I stood at the company entrance and saw the slogan on the wall, "Let every brand be seen." I was the one who came up with that slogan for him. I said to the receptionist, "Please inform your legal department. If they refuse to cooperate, we will apply to the court for a preservation order and inform Horizon Group at the same time." The receptionist panicked and called the legal department. 10 minutes later, the company's lawyer came down, his face dark. "Miss Sinclair, you and Mr. Vance are husband and wife. There's no need to make things so ugly." "Please call me Miss Sinclair or Amara," I said. He flinched. Just then, the elevator doors opened and Darius strode out. He must have just gotten the news and rushed back. His tie was crooked. When he saw my lawyer, his face turned terrifyingly dark. "Amara, you brought people to my company to cause trouble?" "I'm here to retrieve my hard drive," I said. His eyes flickered. I continued. "Gray metal case, ginkgo leaf sticker. On the day of the reunion, a runner picked it up from the Sterling Grand at the instruction of Simone Devereaux and delivered it to your company. It is now in your office safe." The surrounding employees all looked over. Darius lowered his voice. "Who told you that?" I didn't answer. The lawyer presented the documents. "Mr. Vance, we have already submitted the materials to the court. Please cooperate with the inventory check now. If the hard drive does not exist, please also provide a written statement to that effect." Darius laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "Fine, inventory." He led us into his office. He opened the safe. Inside were contracts, company seals, a few USB drives. No hard drive. He turned to me. "Satisfied?" My heart sank. He had moved it. Darius leaned against his desk, his voice low enough for only us to hear. "Amara, I told you not to take things to the extreme. It's not too late to turn back now." He thought I would panic. I did, for a second. But only for a second. I looked at the security camera in the corner of his office. Darius followed my gaze, his expression changing slightly. The company lawyer said, "The office surveillance footage is only kept for 7 days, and it involves trade secrets, so it's not convenient to provide." "That's fine," I nodded. Darius frowned. I took out my phone and made a call. "Mr. Harris." "Hello. I'm at Darius Vance's company. Regarding the ownership dispute of the Haven project, I need to formally submit a statement to Horizon." On the other end, Horizon's Mr. Harris's voice was steady. "Go on, Miss Sinclair." I looked at Darius. Darius Vance's company has refused to provide the key original storage medium and appears to have moved evidence after receiving the preservation of evidence letter. To prevent Horizon from bearing future infringement risks, my side recommends that your company suspend all project progress with Darius Vance's company. Darius's face changed instantly. He reached for my phone. My lawyer stepped forward to block him. Mr. Harris was silent on the phone for a few seconds. Miss Sinclair, come to Horizon this afternoon at 3 p.m. Bring all the materials you have. I hung up. Darius gritted his teeth. Are you determined to ruin me? I looked at him. I'm just bringing what you've hidden into the light. At 3 p.m., the conference room at Horizon was full. This time, it wasn't a presentation, it was an ownership hearing. Horizon's legal, project, and brand departments were all there. Darius came with his company lawyer. Simone was there too, dressed in a white pantsuit, looking much calmer than before. I brought Lena and my lawyer. On the table were 4 evidence binders. First, the original creation timeline of the Haven Project. Second, the authorization contract and its restrictive clauses. Third, the internal records of byline changes from Darius's company. Fourth, the access logs from the Sterling Grand and the runner's records. Before the meeting began, Darius glanced at me. His expression was no longer one of anger, but a kind of suppressed calmness. I knew he still had cards to play. Sure enough, just as Horizon's lawyer finished explaining the procedure, Darius's lawyer presented a supplementary document. We believe Miss Sinclair's so-called original proposal was incomplete. The project model was truly formed through the subsequent development by Mr. Vance's team. Furthermore, during the course of their marriage, Miss Sinclair participated in company activities multiple times in her capacity as Mr. Vance's wife. Her work product should be considered a result of joint marital enterprise. I almost laughed. In the past, when they needed me, I was the wife, so money didn't need to be calculated. Now, when they were fighting for credit, I was still the wife, so I had no independent ownership. In an unequal relationship, even a woman's identity becomes a tool for the other party to use at will. Darius looked at Mr. Harris. Horizon chose us because we have full execution capabilities. Amara is emotionally unstable right now, constantly bringing private conflicts into the project. If she continues to lead, it poses a greater risk to the project. Mr. Harris didn't show his hand. He just looked at me. Miss Sinclair, your response. I opened the projector. The first slide was a photo from the old community research in March of last year. The Haven Project was not originally a commercial proposal, but an independent study on urban women's public spaces that I completed. Here are the original photos, interview recordings, and signed authorizations from the interviewees. The timeline predates the involvement of Darius Vance's company. The second slide was the email. Darius's words, "The core is still you," were clearly displayed on the screen. His face changed slightly. The third slide was the authorization contract. I enlarged the restrictive clauses. Darius's company had the right to use the proposal in the bid for the Horizon project, but could not change the core byline or sublicense it to a third party. Miss Simone Devereaux was not an authorized party. Simone finally spoke. I never actively requested a sublicense. Darius just invited me to provide artistic expression suggestions. I trusted that his arrangements were legal. She spoke calmly, as if she had practiced. I didn't rush to refute her. Instead, I clicked to the next slide. It was her message to Darius. If this project is a success, I can start over. Amara loves you so much. She probably won't mind a byline, right? Someone in the room looked up at her. Simone's face paled for a moment, but she quickly recovered. This is just a private conversation. It doesn't prove I knew the details of the contract. Fine. I moved to the next slide. It was the email with the flyer she sent to her investors. In the email, she wrote, "The inaugural salon of the Woven Woman Art Therapy Space will be held at the Sterling Grand. The spatial concept comes from my core project since returning to the country, Haven at the Sterling. The Sterling Grand, my penthouse, my proposal, her core project." I looked at her. Miss Devereaux, is this also a private conversation? Her lips moved, but she couldn't form a word. Darius suddenly cut in. That salon never happened. No actual damage was caused. I know, I nodded. Because my mother sold the house. A brief silence fell over the room. Some people had already heard about the online drama with the penthouse, but this was the first time they were hearing the complete cause and effect. I played the recording from the reunion. Darius's voice filled the room. I'm in a terrible mood. Just looking at Amara is irritating me. Don't come home tonight. Then came Simone's voice. Amara, Darius has been under a lot of pressure lately. Try to understand. It's not a big deal to stay at your mother's for one night. When the recording ended, I didn't explain. I just switched to the next slide. On the evening of the reunion, a runner entered the Sterling Grand. Recipient: Simone Devereaux. Item description: hard drive. This was followed by the internal chat logs provided by Crystal. Hard drive received. Put it in my office. Sender: Darius Vance. Someone in the room finally gasped. Darius's face was completely dark. He looked at me, his voice cold. You bribed my employee. You tried to make your employee the scapegoat first, I said. She was just choosing to protect herself. He clenched his fists. The hard drive is not with me now. You can't prove I moved evidence. This was his final card. As long as the hard drive wasn't found, he could still drag this out. But he forgot that a hard drive isn't the only form of evidence. I looked at Lena. She stood up and handed a file to Horizon's legal team. This is a screenshot from the public area surveillance footage we obtained yesterday from the new owner's lawyer at the Sterling Grand. The original video has been notarized and preserved. A video played on the projector. On the night of the reunion, the runner Simone had left the Sterling Grand carrying a small bag. 2 hours later, the same runner was captured on surveillance entering the lobby of Darius's office building. 12 minutes later, he left empty-handed. The next morning, Darius entered his company, carrying that same small bag. He took the bag into his office. The footage up to this point wasn't enough. I switched to the final clip. 10 minutes before receiving the preservation of evidence letter, Darius came out of his office, holding the same small bag, and handed it to Simone. The room was completely silent. Simone shot a look at Darius. She never expected the surveillance cameras would have caught her. Darius's face changed. He said immediately, "That's not the hard drive." I looked at Simone. Then, "Are you willing to show us what's in your bag right now?" Her fingers trembled. She was carrying that exact same beige handbag today. Everyone's eyes fell on her bag. Darius said her name in a low voice, Simone. It wasn't reassurance. It was a warning. Simone's eyes slowly reddened. She finally understood. When Darius handed her the hard drive, it wasn't just about trust. It was also about shifting the risk. If this blew up, she would be the one holding the evidence. She would be the one to go down first. Simone bit her lip, opened her bag, and took out a gray metal hard drive. The ginkgo leaf sticker, under the bright lights of the conference room, was as glaring as a long overdue testimony. When the hard drive was connected to the Horizon lawyer's computer, Darius lost his composure for the first time. He stood up, demanding, "The files could have been tampered with. I demand a third-party forensic analysis." Mr. Harris agreed. But at the same time, he announced that pending the results of the analysis, Horizon was suspending its partnership with Darius Vance's company and reserved the right to pursue action for submission of false materials and infringement risk. The composure on Darius's face finally cracked. He looked at Simone. Simone avoided his gaze. In that moment, I didn't feel a triumphant desire to laugh. I just felt tired. For a marriage to come to this, the saddest part wasn't that he had loved someone else. It was that from beginning to end, he had never treated my contributions as the labor of an independent person worthy of respect. He treated me as a wife, a resource, a safety net, an old piece of furniture that wouldn't complain, but never as Amara. After the hearing, Mr. Harris called me aside. "Miss Sinclair, the project can continue, but Horizon needs a stable team. Are you willing to resubmit the proposal under your studio's name?" This was an opportunity, but also immense pressure. With Darius's company out, there would be a huge gap in execution. My studio was small, focused more on early-stage curation and narrative design. To take on the entire Horizon project independently would require rebuilding construction, communications, and operations teams. Lena looked at me from the side, her eyes a mix of hope and worry. I didn't immediately accept Mr. Harris's offer. I need 48 hours to assess our execution capabilities. If we can't do it, I won't take on a project I can't handle just to prove a point. Mr. Harris nodded, a new level of respect in his eyes. "I'll wait for your answer." It was dark when I left the Horizon building. Darius was waiting for me at the entrance. Simone was gone. He stood under a streetlight, looking as if a layer of his strength had been stripped away. "Amara," he called out. I stopped. "Let's talk," he said. I looked at him. "My lawyer will talk to your lawyer. Not about the project, not about the divorce." His voice was hoarse. "I just want to ask you one thing. Did you stop loving me a long time ago?" I was surprised. Not because the question was deep, but because even now he wanted to drag everything back to feelings. As if by proving I no longer loved him, Everything he did would be downgraded to a relationship failure instead of betrayal, misappropriation, and deceit. Darius, I said, whether I love you or not isn't important anymore. His eyes reddened. How can it not be important? We had a 3-year marriage. You're just throwing it all away. I looked at him and suddenly remembered so many small things. The time he landed his first big client, so drunk he could barely stand, and I was the one who brought him home from the bar, wiped his face, and changed his clothes. The time his company had cash flow problems, and I was the one who delayed my studio's invoices so he could pay his employees first. The time his mother came to the city for a medical appointment, and I was the one who made appointments and accompanied her, only for Brenda to brag to her relatives that her son was so capable, he married such an obedient wife. These things weren't earth-shattering. But a marriage is hollowed out in these small, unremembered moments. Darius, it's not me throwing it away, I said. It was you who spent 3 years telling me I wasn't important. His throat moved. I can change. You don't want to change. You just realize the price is too high. The moment those words left my mouth, his face went pale. Because it was true. If Horizon hadn't suspended the partnership, if the house hadn't been sold, if the hard drive hadn't been found, he wouldn't be standing here asking if I loved him. He would still be telling me I was making a big deal out of nothing. Back at the studio, we held a meeting that lasted all night. Lena listed the execution gaps. The communications team could be outsourced. Construction supervision could be handled by previous partners. But the operations module needed strengthening. The budget pressure was also significant. Although Horizon was willing to restart, they wouldn't advance much. The studio would have to front the initial costs. My mother found out and offered a loan. I refused. She looked at me. Why? Don't you need the money? I do, I said. But this time, I want to use the studio's own credit line and the project's returns to solve it. Mom, you can help me review the contracts, but don't be my safety net. My mother was quiet for a long time. Amara, are you drawing a line with me? I nodded. This is hard, because I know you sold the house to protect me, but I also know that if I always hide in your protection, after Darius, there will be someone else who thinks I can be managed. Mom, I said, I'm grateful you helped me close that door, but the road ahead, I have to walk it myself. There was a glint of moisture in my mother's eyes. She quickly took a sip of water to hide it. Fine. Bring me the contracts. I'll review them, but I won't sign for you. 48 hours later, I gave Mr. Harris my answer. We'll take it. Not out of stubborn pride, but because I had contacted 3 old partners, resegmented the execution timeline, cut unnecessary promotional expenses, and laid out the budget and risks transparently for Horizon. After reviewing the new execution plan, Mr. Harris said only one thing: this is how you get things done. The day Horizon officially announced the contract with my studio, Darius's company also received a legal notice. They were being investigated for submitting false ownership documents, altering bylines without authorization, and infringing on an original proposal. Horizon terminated their partnership and demanded compensation for the initial delays. On the same day, my divorce petition was officially filed. Darius finally stopped sending voicemails. He sent a text. Amara, do we really have to go to court? I replied, yes. Before the divorce hearing, Darius made one last attempt to fight back. He published a long article online titled, To My Wife, and to Everyone Who Has Lost Their Way in a Marriage. In it, he painted himself as a husband crushed by career pressure, and me as a wife who, influenced by her wealthy family, had become increasingly controlling. He admitted his words at the reunion were hurtful but insisted he had not cheated. When mentioning Simone, he described her as a longtime friend who he was helping out of a sense of duty after she was targeted by online trolls, a gesture that was maliciously misinterpreted. At the end of the article, he wrote, I am willing to bear the responsibility for my failings as a husband. I also hope Amara can remember why we fell in love in the first place. Marriage is not a battlefield. It shouldn't be carved up by contracts and evidence until it's unrecognizable. The piece was moving, at least more moving than his apologies. It was quickly shared. Some said Darius was taking responsibility, better than men who give the silent treatment. Others asked if I was being too harsh, cornering him with evidence. Public opinion swayed once again. Lena laughed in frustration. He's playing the victim card, trying to force you into the role of the unforgiving bad guy. I read the long article, then turned off my phone. Let him. We're not responding. We did respond, but not by arguing. The next day, I used the studio's official account to release a brief statement, No lengthy accusations, just 3 parts. First, the unedited audio recording from the reunion. Second, the ownership documents for the Haven project and Horizon's public notice of terminating their contract with Darius's company. Third, the facts from the Sterling Grand's access logs showing Simone's multiple entries into our marital home, along with a statement from my mother's company clarifying ownership of the property. At the end of the statement was a single sentence. In a marriage, one can talk about feelings. Infringement and betrayal must be discussed with evidence. This time, the public's reaction was different. Because many people finally saw that what Darius was avoiding wasn't a conversation about love, but accountability for what he had taken. Simone's investors also issued a statement terminating their partnership. Her Woven Woman project was suspended, and all materials from her pitch decks that involved the Haven project were removed. She sent me a message. "Amara, must you push people to a dead end?" I didn't reply, because I suddenly understood that the thing she and Darius had most in common was the belief that their own predicaments were more important than my rights. She needed a fresh start, so she could take my work. Darius needed his career, so he could sacrifice my name. Brenda needed her son's pride, so she could call me a toxic daughter-in-law. Everyone had their reasons. But I was no longer paying the bill for their reasons. On the day of the hearing, I wore a black wool coat. Not to look intimidating, but because it was a cold day. Darius arrived before me. He had lost a lot of weight, with dark circles under his eyes. The shoulders of his suit didn't seem as sharp as before. He saw me and stood up. "Amara." I gave him a slight nod. Brenda was there too, sitting in the gallery. She wasn't crying or making a scene, but her eyes were still full of resentment. Simone didn't come. I heard she and Darius had a falling out. After the hard drive incident, to distance herself from liability, she had given many of their chat records to her own lawyer to prove she had been misled by Darius into participating in the project. She claimed he had betrayed her. The deep affection and understanding they had performed in front of me crumbled to dust in the face of responsibility. The hearing wasn't like the dramatic scenes in movies. It was mostly a verification of evidence, a review of assets, and statements from both sides. My demands were clear: dissolve the marriage, confirm the Sterling Grand was not marital property, have Darius's company pay reasonable fees for the use of my original concepts and project resources over the past 3 years, and divide the joint marital assets according to the law. The infringement related to the Haven project would be handled in a separate case. Darius's lawyer tried to argue that my frequent participation in company business as his wife, without a separate salary contract, meant my work was part of the joint enterprise. My lawyer presented the emails, the authorization contracts, the project minutes, and client confirmation letters. One letter clearly stated that a key reason for choosing Darius's company was the community space curation capabilities and early-stage research provided by Miss Amara Sinclair. Darius sat opposite me, his face turning grayer and grayer. When it was his turn to speak, he was silent for a long time. Only after the judge prompted him did he begin. "I admit that Amara contributed a lot to the company's development. I also admit that the initial proposal for the Haven project came primarily from her." Brenda shot up from her seat in the gallery. "Darius!" The judge glanced over, and she immediately fell silent. Darius continued, "But I never intended to harm her. I just felt that since we were husband and wife, we didn't need to draw such clear lines." The judge asked, "Did you alter the byline without her consent?" He clenched his fist. "Yes." "Did you list Miss Simone Devereaux as an artistic co-creator?" "Yes." "Were you aware of the restrictions in the authorization contract?" He paused for a long time. "I was aware." When those 2 words fell, I didn't feel the triumph I had imagined. I just looked down at my hands. The ring was gone. A faint, pale mark remained on my ring finger. Worn for 3 years, removed for a few weeks. The trace hadn't completely vanished, but it would. After the hearing, Darius caught up with me in the corridor. "Amara, I admitted it in there." "I heard you," I said. A flicker of hope appeared in his eyes. "Then can we not go all the way? I can compensate you. I can give the project back to you. We can start over. We can buy another house." I looked at him and felt like he was a stranger. Perhaps even now, he didn't understand. What I sold wasn't just a house. It was the light he thought would always be on for him. "Darius," I said, "you admitted it not for my sake, but because the evidence was there. It would have looked worse for you if you didn't." The hope in his face shattered. "You really have to think of me that way? It's what you taught me." He stood there, his voice faint. Then what am I supposed to do? He had never asked that question before. It used to be me asking myself, what do I do if he's tired? What do I do if his stomach hurts? What do I do if his company is losing money? What do I do if his mother is unhappy? Now it was finally his turn to ask. But I was no longer obligated to answer. That's your life, I said. The judgment came 2 months later. My marriage with Darius was dissolved. The sterling grand was legally recognized as a premarital asset of my mother's company, separate from our joint property. Darius was ordered to pay me compensation for a portion of my project labor and licensing fees. The amount wasn't as sensational as some online rumors, but it was enough to establish one thing clearly. My labor was not a freebie in a marriage. The infringement case for the Haven project was resolved through mediation. Darius's company issued a public correction of the byline, apologized to me, and compensated both Horizon and my studio for some of the losses. The incident severely damaged his company. Many clients left, employees resigned, and the office moved from the city center to a cheaper location on the west side. He didn't go bankrupt overnight. In the real world, a person rarely hits rock bottom after a single mistake. But he lost the things he valued most: his image, his credibility, and the home that had made him mistakenly believe he owned everything. Brenda sought me out one more time, at the courthouse entrance. She no longer spoke with her chin held high. She clutched an old purse and looked much older. She said, "Amara, Darius has been having a hard time." I nodded. "I see." She waited for me to say more. I didn't. Her eyes reddened. "You were husband and wife after all. He knows he was wrong. In this life, who doesn't make mistakes? You've gotten your money now and the project is back with you. Can't you just give him a chance?" I looked at her and felt a sense of calm. "Mrs. Vance, do you still think what I wanted was money and the project?" She frowned. "Then what did you want?" I thought for a moment. I wanted that when he told me not to come home, I could really not go home. I wanted that when he took my things to give to someone else, I could really take them back. I wanted everyone to know that a wife is not a free resource, and a daughter-in-law is not your family's shock absorber. Brenda's lips trembled. "You're too hard." "I am," I said. 3 years of being soft was enough. She said nothing more. I heard about Simone's fate from Lena. Her art therapy project failed to continue. Her investors demanded she return part of their initial funding. To prove she was also a victim, she publicly claimed that Darius had concealed the authorization status, causing her to misuse the materials. But the emails she sent to investors, the surveillance footage of her holding the hard drive, and her complicity at the reunion made her claims untenable. She later left the city. No one knew where she went. I didn't pursue her. The consequences she had to bear were already delivered by contracts and the market. As for Darius, he sent me one last email. It was long. He said he often thought about the year he first started his company, when I would sit with him in the old office, eating takeout. One day, the power went out, and the whole building was dark. I used my phone's flashlight to help him revise a proposal. He said at that moment, he truly believed he would remember my goodness for the rest of his life. He said he didn't know when he started taking my goodness for granted. He said that the night the door to the Sterling Grand wouldn't open, he felt fear for the first time. Not because he had nowhere to sleep, but because he realized he had been standing on a foundation I had provided all along, yet he had mistaken it for his own achievement. At the end of the email, he asked if we could meet one last time. I didn't reply. Not to punish him. I just had nothing left to say to him. On the day the Haven project officially launched, Horizon invited me to the site. I had changed much of the original proposal. I removed the overly ornate and empty art installations and kept more of the practical functions. A 2-4-hour help hotline, a temporary childcare corner, a women's legal aid office, a shared kitchen, a repair station for old belongings, and a long message wall. The first messages on the wall were written by women from the community. One wrote, "I can wait for the bus here after my night shift and I feel safe." Another wrote, "After a fight, I have a place to sit for a while instead of crying in the stairwell." And another, "I learned that I can get by on my own." I stood in front of that wall, holding a hot cup of coffee. Lena bumped my shoulder from behind. "Smile, Miss Sinclair. Today, you're the star." I smiled. Not a big, exaggerated smile, but a quiet one, as a heavy stone I had been carrying in my heart finally found its place on the ground. My mother came too. She didn't arrange interviews for me like she used to. She just waited in the crowd until I was done. When people started to leave, she handed me a small box. Inside was a key. I was stunned. She said, "It's not a house. It's the key to my old archive office. Didn't you say you wanted to build a resource library for women's spaces? It's empty. I'll rent it to you." "How much is the rent?" I asked. She quoted a normal market price. Not cheap, but not discounted either. I smiled. "You're a sharp businesswoman, Vivian." She smiled back. "And you, Amara, need to learn to pay rent." We walked out of the venue side by side. The night air was a bit cool, but the lights were bright. There was a food cart selling warm, soft pretzels. My mother stopped and asked if I wanted one. "A small one," I said. She chatted with the vendor for a minute and ended up buying 2 large ones anyway. I carried the paper bag, the warmth seeping through my fingers. My phone buzzed. It was a message from the management of the Sterling Grand. The new owner was renovating and asked if I wanted to move the old lemon tree I had left on the terrace. I had bought that tree in the 2nd year of my marriage. Darius had complained it was a hassle to take care of, but I could never bear to throw it away. I looked at the photo. The leaves were a bit yellow, but the branches were still alive. I replied, "Yes, please. Could you hold it for me for a couple of days? I'll come get it." The next afternoon, I went to the Sterling Grand. The new owner wasn't there. Only a building staff member accompanied me upstairs. When the door opened, the inside was no longer familiar. The wallpaper was stripped, the chandelier was gone, and the living room was empty. Sunlight poured in, unobstructed. I didn't feel sad for long. You live in a place for 3 years, there will be traces. But traces are not shackles. The lemon tree was still in the corner of the terrace. A worker helped me carry it downstairs and put it in the trunk of my car. The building manager said with some emotion, "You know, Miss Sinclair, Mr. Vance came by a few days ago. He just stood downstairs for a long time." I nodded but didn't ask what happened next. It had nothing to do with me anymore. By the time I drove to the new studio, it was getting dark. Lena and a few colleagues were assembling bookshelves. The walls weren't fully painted. Boxes of files were piled on the floor, and the air smelled of sawdust and paint. I placed the lemon tree by the window. It looked out of place in this unfinished space, but I liked it. At 8 p.m., everyone finished for the day and left. I stayed behind alone, putting old project files into the cabinets one by one. When I got to the section for the Haven project, I paused. I affixed a new label to the cover. Amara Sinclair Studio. Original Archive Number 1. The streetlights outside came on. I made myself a cup of tea and sat at the unassembled desk, slowly breaking off a piece of the now cool pretzel. It wasn't very warm, a little tough even, but I ate it with great care. Back at the Sterling Grand, I was always waiting for Darius to come home for dinner. The food would get cold, I'd reheat it, and it would get cold again. I later understood that for a person to build a stable life, it's not about waiting for someone to come back. It's about knowing who to open the door for, and who to close it on. That night, I turned off the last main light in the studio, leaving only the small lamp by the window. The leaves of the lemon tree cast faint shadows in the light. I locked the door, went downstairs, and put the key in my purse. This time, the key belonged only to me.